My next story goes to a topic that we've touched on, but really, I think, deserves some focus, and that is the subject of flight. So, I mean, if you think about what are the most amazing inventions in human history, you'd have to have flight right up there. And if you think about inventions that have had a meaningful impact on human flourishing, like nothing has so improved our ability to travel affordably and efficiently, and really brought the globe into a single unit economically and otherwise as flight. And then now we're getting a trend that is particularly big in Europe, apparently, but is coming to our shores, no doubt by virtue of people flying over here. Flight shaming. And so the New York Times travel columnist, who's a person you would think, well, if anybody's for flight, it would have to be a travel columnist. This guy, Seth Kugel, he basically penned a lamentation about the damage he's doing to the environment by traveling and the damage we're all doing and how to wrestle with this horrible guilt. And he describes how, until 2016, he just would fly, never gave it any thought. And then he had this great awakening, and part of it came from his alarming realization that, oh my gosh, more and more people are going to be enjoying traveling over the coming decades. And so well, that can't be good. And so he has, what should be our advice in a world where flying is immoral because of its impact on the environment. And he says, well, look, you don't have to avoid flying completely. First of all, he says that rather than feel guilty, what you should really be doing is working to have government policies address climate. And he's not clear on what those policies would be in the realm of air travel. But he does say what you should be doing personally is you should cut back on your overall travel mileage. And, quote, do you really need to take that many trips a year? There are platitudes aplenty about travel. It inspires, it educates, it reduces bigotry. But not all trips meet those standards. Consider an educational exchange program in Vietnam compared to a week resort in the Maldives or Maldives. I'm sorry, I'm not well-traveled enough or sophisticated enough to know what that location is. Pause on that for a second. So basically you're allowed to travel if it's for some do-gooder project, but if it's for your own personal pleasure, if it's you actually want to relax and have real enjoyment in your life, no, that does not pass the test. And then he goes on to give a bunch of advice for how to travel when you must. It's things like avoid airplanes and resort to buses, which, as bad as air travel has become today, a bus is pretty much like the ultimate nightmare travel situation, I think. Again, there's just no concern for comfort. That does not even make it into the equation. And he gives a bunch of other ideas, and he concludes, most of this will make travel more expensive, and that may mean traveling even less. Think of it as a progressive tax paid by those lucky enough to travel for damaging the world those who can't travel must live in. It is a small price to pay, and maybe it will make you feel a little less shame. What that makes me feel is complete disgust. Notice it's not, hey, we should strive for a world where everybody can travel. He began his whole opposition by lamenting the fact that more and more of these people are going to be traveling in the future. That is, more and more people who couldn't afford to travel in the past are going to be able to do it. And he sees that as a bad thing. And now we're supposed to pay penance, not by trying to make those people richer and able to travel, but just by denying ourselves pleasure. And a big part of the context here is you'd think, oh my gosh, well, flying is, if we are going to rob ourselves of all the benefits of flying, unless it's, for some kind of politically correct cause, this better have a big impact on saving the planet, right? Surely this should be helping the cause in some significant way. But in fact, flying is really about 2% of global emissions. And, some anti-flying activists have tried to argue that it's as high as 5%. But basically, it's, if you were concerned about climate, you'd say, like, this is not a big factor for something where there's no real substitute. But again, like, it's not concern for climate, it's concern for minimizing human impact and minimizing human happiness. And, like, I mean, the way I think about it is, we live in a world of achievement. And what the green movement agenda is, in every case, is just to tear down achievement. So we have the fossil fuel industry that's achieved reliable, affordable energy for billions of people. And then the green movement, their achievement is to let's get rid of it. And then you have like farmers and people who've created GMOs who've managed to have affordable, delicious food for billions, and their solution is get rid of it. And then you have affordable, efficient transportation that can bring you across the globe in a matter of hours. And it's not, wow, that's amazing and let's make it better. It's let's stop using it, feel guilty for it, and ultimately get rid of it. And this is why I think it's just so important that we appreciate achievement and not take it for granted. It kind of reminds me of there was recently a G7 meeting which I think we'll talk about one of the outcomes of that, which is a pledge of, I think, $20 million for the Amazon forest fires. But the Trump administration apparently was complaining about things like climate being on the agenda and, dismiss them as niche issues, which I thought was pretty funny. But if you're thinking about human flourishing, it's true. Like, the core issue of human flourishing is that we need productive achievement. And we need it for many reasons, but one of them is that that's what gives us a livable climate. And that's precisely where our focus should be. And yet that is all taken for granted. Instead, our focus is on what can we ban? And then if we can't ban it, what can we feel guilty for doing in our own lives? Steffen, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think there's a sort of indirect climate connection there because I recently saw an argument that for many flights, at least on the economy level, the air travel is already more fuel efficient than driving by car. So from a minimizing the resource footprint, flying in some cases is better than driving, or at least everyone individually driving, I think. But this kind of argument totally misses the point, right? Because as you said, they don't want you to get as efficiently as possible from A to B. They want you to stop before B. They want you to travel less, right? And so what it ultimately always boils down to is, just you shouldn't travel. You should minimize your footprint entirely. And so any kind of argument about, but air travel isn't actually that harmful or not that relevant or something, they want at every level humans to do less, to achieve less, and to be, less lively. That's ultimately the green ideal. You can't avoid that, and like ultimately every narrative that says, oh, we'll just do the same with smarter technology, or we will even, like in the Bernie Sanders plan that we discussed earlier, they say you're going to save money. No, you shouldn't save money. If you want minimum climate impact or minimum any impact, everything needs to be more expensive, and you need to be less able to afford anything, right? So the ultimate goal is to do less. It's not like, oh, do it in a better way.